Sandy Karger, and my husband has frontotemporal dementia.
My name is Jamie Arking, and my father has frontotemporal dementia.
My name is Diane Fehon. My husband Bill has frontotemporal degeneration, or FTD.
FTD is not uncommon. It is the second most common neurodegenerative condition, and among individuals with a younger age of onset, it is as common as Alzheimer's disease. FTD presents in two different ways. One way is as a disorder of behavior and personality, and a second is as a disorder of communication, something that we call aphasia, where there's a problem with speech and language. At the Penn FTD Center, we have a compassionate, multidisciplinary team working towards finding a diagnosis, a treatment, and a cure for this debilitating disease.
Bill was diagnosed in November of 2009, but of course we knew something was wrong 2 to 3 years at least before that. We used to take 3-mile walks every day, and he became obsessed with any dogs he would see along our route or little children. He would act silly, almost childlike himself. He would talk to strangers, and it was out of the ordinary for him to be overly friendly in that way. So that was one of the first memories I have of knowing something's wrong. He was a high school science teacher. And finally, in March of 2009, I got a voicemail at work from his boss and said, "Can you come in and talk to me?" And I just knew that finally things were going to shift. So the first thing was to get him to go to our GP, he saw Bill. He gave him a physical, he asked him questions, and he said, "Bill, nothing is wrong with you. Just go home and listen to your wife." I was furious and so anxious. I went to the nurse of the school, and she actually offered to help me find a good neurologist. And the neurologist said, "I don't know what's wrong with him." So this is crushing again. There's no answer. So we finally got to the Penn FTD Center and saw Dr. Grossman, and he diagnosed him with FTD. And I have to say, I laughed out loud. I was so relieved that it finally had a name.
Many patients who come to the FTD Center have seen several doctors before and have had many tests, and this is because part of the definition of this disease is a progression or change over time, and it can be very frustrating for patients early in the disease course where a spouse or family member may notice the patient's just not themselves, but there needs time for the disease to progress and manifest before it can be clinically detected.
When a patient first comes to the FTD Center, we obtain a complete medical history along with a physical and neurological examination. We use paper and pencil and computerized tests to evaluate cognitive abilities. We also use questionnaires and caregiver interviews to assess behavioral problems that are common in FTD.
My husband was officially diagnosed with FTD, I'd say about 8 years ago. The thing that impressed me so much was that in the first initial interview, Dr. Grossman spent, I think, probably an hour and a half or more talking with Bob. I had MRIs. He didn't look at the MRI initially. He did the interview, did his cognitive testing. The very end, he said, "I think I know what this is. Let me see the MRI." He put the MRI up, was right there. I was like a deer in the headlights. At that point, I was told, get your affairs in order. We can't tell you what this is going to look like. I can give you sort of a ballpark explanation of what you might go through. So it was very, very frightening. And then it was very sad. It was extremely sad to think that this man was losing before my eyes very gradually who he is, who he was. I think as I look back, I keep cycling through those feelings. They're never resolved. I'll get to a point and I'll think, oh, I'm through the grief process. Or I'm through being frightened. I'm finished with that. I'm going to move on now. I've accepted it. It doesn't happen because the loss is incremental. And as you go through each loss, you sort of automatically revisit all of those feelings all over again. It's changed our lives in terms of what I think about the future. I have found myself becoming much more centered on one day at a time. And it's changed the freedom of, say, as the caregiver, my thinking and what I can do, and what I thought when I retired we would both do together. The other thing that has changed is certainly our inability to travel on big trips. I try to keep things extremely structured because things work better that way, but I have to be careful planning things. You know, how much can we do in a day, or how much can he do in a day?
I think the biggest challenge for FTD treatment is getting the support and resources to caregivers. The brunt of this disease falls solely on those closest to the individual with the disease, unfortunately, and it is very difficult to navigate the healthcare system and obtain the types of resources to give structure to a patient's day-to-day life and to help a caregiver keep a patient safe and cognitively stimulated.
I think the FTD Center was the key in helping me move forward. The medical information that I received, that was one piece, the clinical aspect of this, the education.
So in the Penn FTD Center, we spend a lot of time talking to patients and families about their symptoms, treatment, and prognosis. And I think that this allows the patient and the family to have the knowledge to be able to make informed decisions about their care. One of the ways that we educate caregivers on a larger scale is through our annual caregiver conference. So some of the topics include basic science information. We talk about new research findings. We talk about things like new diagnostic technologies. Most importantly, I think for the caregivers, this is an opportunity to meet other caregivers, to share stories about the caregiving experience.
If I look back to that first conference I went to 8-9 years ago, compared with the last conference last summer, there's a world of difference in the knowledge. That's not happening everywhere. We are just so lucky that it's here.
FTD is inherited in about 20% of cases, so you can imagine that families are often concerned about the risk for their children. If there is a concern for an inherited form of FTD, we have a genetic counselor who can talk to the family about options for genetic testing.
My father was diagnosed with FTD in June of 2013. So Penn offers genetic testing for this disease. And after my father's diagnosis, I needed to know whether or not I had the same mutation as my father. The process through Penn was quite easy. You meet with a genetic counselor. She explains that just because you have the mutation does not mean that you are definitely going to come down with FTD. Are you sure you want to know? Because this is, once you know, you cannot take back that information. My blood was drawn, and you're sent home, and you come back, I think, a month later. And you go in, and you sit down with the genetic counselor again. She told me that, yes, I have the same mutation that my father has. While I thought that it would not be a problem to know it, it was one of the most difficult things for me to hear. I've now known about this for quite some time and have made peace with the fact that it's there, and if it does happen, there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, I know that Penn is working on research to try and abate the disease and stop progression. And we're always on the edge of some kind of breakthrough. One of the main reasons that I wanted to learn for myself is because I wanted to jump in on any clinical trials that Penn has going on. I want to make sure that I avail myself to those clinical trials so that, one, selfishly, I can be a part of something that is hopefully innovative and curative, and also to help, to do my part to help with the general knowledge base of what's going on with FTD. And Penn is an important part in that in that growth of knowledge towards hopefully an FTD cure.
Even though for my husband and a lot of the people that I know that are in my group, the cure is probably not going to be there in time. Someday it will be. And just knowing that, it's really hard for me to describe the hope and the comfort that comes from knowing that this gigantic body, this pool of people from all sorts of disciplines are working so hard on this effort.
We are pursuing different methods for identifying biomarkers of disease. This includes using different imaging methods like MRI imaging and PET imaging, and doing different types of genetic testing, different biofluid biomarkers that include cerebral spinal fluid and blood. And we're interested in relating all of these to the proteins that are causing an individual's disease. About 85% of patients seen in the FTD Center choose to participate in the research program, and of those, about 40% of them choose to participate in the brain donation program. This is a very valuable donation because it allows us to determine the gold standard of what was causing an individual's disease so that we can retrospectively use that data to design better treatments to help the next generation of patients.
Dr. Grossman and his entire team has been a resource of knowledge and comfort for me and for my family as we battle this disease.
In the support group that I lead, I can tell you countless stories of people who've either moved loved ones here, who have been cared for in other places, or people that just haven't ventured to Penn. People are over-medicated, they're getting the wrong medication. It's a world of difference.
The staff at the FTD Center are so kind and understanding and helpful. I feel like I can call them at any moment with questions, and I have, and they've helped me maneuver and navigate this uncharted territory, and I'm just grateful that they're there. It's a lifeline for me.